me pour some crazy juice down my gullet and see if the technology wants to play. Hello. Awesome. So a couple of things. Thank you very much for coming tonight, and thanks to the UXPA for hosting and bringing us all together. My name is Daniel Harvey. I'm head of product design and brand at a startup called The Dots, and we're a London-based company. Forbes and TechCrunch and groups like that have called us a LinkedIn for creatives. So if you want to connect with other designers or if you want to find your dream job, then please check us out at thedots.com. I'm looking at some familiar faces, so if I start laughing maniacally, that's why. Second point, I lived in New York for 20 years. I've been here for about 6. The 6 years of polite civility that I've experienced in London has done nothing to erode my savage nature. So I hope you give 0 fucks, that I'm probably going to say fuck a fucking lot. That's 3 of them right there, if you're keeping count, Rick. And I promise, even if you're super up to date on this particular example of some nasty dark UX, that you will at least learn something new today on slide 6. So keep your eyes peeled. So I don't know about you guys, but when this scandal between Facebook and Cambridge Analytica first came to light, I felt the full range of human emotions. And it's only thanks to the tireless efforts of journalists at outfits like The Guardian, Channel 4, and The New York Times that we even know about that. And before I get into the details and the dark UX and the shifty business models, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the sort of main players in this scandal. So first, we have these 2 fucks. That's 4. And the gentleman on left, right, my right, your left, is a tech douche bro who famously got inspired by Hot or Not in his college dorm because he has to talk about his fucking college dorm. So it's clear that he has no idea of what the concept of consent even means. And we have Sheryl Sandberg, who is typically the adult in the room, who has been conspicuously absent during this whole apology tour, by and large. It was her job to monetize Facebook. So until these 2 disruptive geniuses come up with a better business model than 20th century advertising, probably not going to be much incentive for them to change. And we'll continue to have dark UX all over the place. Anyway, we also have this fucking lunatic. Once upon a time named Alexander Kogan, then Alexander Spectre, to make it more James Bond-like, and then back to Kogan. I think he's decided to walk that bit of lunacy back. Data scientist at Cambridge University, who back in 2013, does anyone even remember where they were in 2013? I don't. But in 2013, he created an app, stupid fucking quiz app on Facebook called This Is Your Digital Life. And he handed that app over to this smarmy motherfucker, who is Andrew Nix. And even though he is now the ex-CEO of Cambridge Analytica, still has the most punchable face in Britain. And Cambridge Analytica helped snooker basically 270,000 people on Facebook to take Kogan's quiz for, and feel the air quotes here, people, academic research purposes only. And then 2 years later, in 2015, Facebook discovered that Kogan had shared the data with Cambridge Analytica, and in their continuing lack of imagination and naivete, asked them if they would delete the data and took their word for it. Shocking plot twist, they didn't. And what's more, that data how many of you actually checked out to see if you were part of the compromised bodies? And how many of you were compromised? Anyone? Oh, Caroline, you poor...
Not directly. I didn't download...
Yeah. We'll talk about that. Caroline's data is now free game on the internet. We're almost done with the cast of characters. This is slide 6. I've promised you will learn something new here. Cambridge Analytica is an affiliated corporation with aggregate IQ. Anyone know those guys? They helped do your Leave campaign during Brexit and all that. Good times. Thanks for that. I moved here to get an EU passport, and you guys fucked it up for me. This whole sort of group of companies is part of something called Strategic Communication Laboratories. And there's basically just a web of shit. So you've got Donald Trump in here in the mix. Steve Bannon's a VP of Cambridge Analytica. The whole thing's owned by Robert Mercer. You've got this dickbag up here, that jerk, and a bunch of other people. So the new thing you've learned is that Google is what you call a pack of weasels. I didn't know that. I had to look it up. Numbers. Caroline, hi Caroline, is part of the 87 million people who have been compromised thanks to those 270,000 people. And so back in the day, when that This Is Your Digital Life app was up and running, it was by default that you were sharing not just your information when you took these stupid fucking quizzes, but also the information of all of your friends and family, which is why poor Caroline has now been compromised and people are selling her credit card information on the dark web. So if you think about that number for a minute, because tech companies love to talk about big numbers in terms of things that we can understand. So 87 million people is bigger than the population of Germany, the UK, and France. And it's also bigger than the population of Myanmar, where the UN has basically determined that the content on Facebook has been leading to genocide. So hey, there's that too. Thanks for that. Let's stay focused here. And guess what? That 87 million number, a hell of a lot bigger, because we just found out the other day from another whistleblower at Cambridge Analytica that there were other quizzes that were doing the same thing. One of them called Sex Compass. So I'm looking at you. I know you took the Sex Compass quiz. More numbers. Who doesn't love numbers? This is the number of data points that Facebook has on you as a member of the Facebook community. Show of hands, anyone not on Facebook? Never ever been on Facebook? You're a better person for it. So this is just a smattering of the types of information that Facebook keeps on you. It has facial recognition data, your sexual preference, your IP addresses, friends you've deleted, keeps track of those, your political views, your religious views, and even fucking pokes. Who even keeps track of that? They shouldn't. It's pokes. So the trick here is that some of this information you actually do have control over. You can opt to remove it from their systems and how they sort of remove it from their systems. Some of it you can't. So you can't tell Facebook to get rid of your list of deleted friends. They keep it for security purposes. And that's the thing. A lot of these companies, particularly ones that are predicated on advertising models, who need people to need eyeballs, need lots of eyeballs on the content, they try to create this false dichotomy between privacy and security, privacy and convenience, and those things don't have to be mutually exclusive. and they only are when your business model is corporate surveillance. Anyway, the most salient thing that came out of Zuckerberg's congressional hearings, any of you guys watch it? Highly riveting. The most salient thing that came out of the hearings was when Congressman Ben Lujan, a Democrat from New Mexico, basically talked to Zuckerberg about what's popularly now called shadow profiles. And those are basically, what's your name?
Maxine.
Maxine. Maxine, you might not be on Facebook, but Facebook still has 1,500 data points about you. And that was something that people had been talking about. Journalists had been sort of putting forward that they existed. And it was only during the hearings that that sort of genuinely came to light. And that's an especially dark piece of UX because, Maxine, if you want to find out what those data points are that Facebook has on you, guess what you have to do? You have to fucking sign up. Fantastic. Well done. GDPR, anyone? Anyone? This is, I just sort of go to sleep listening to Siri read GDPR to me. Very relaxing. So Facebook clearly can't be trusted to regulate itself. And fortunately, here in this lovely part of the world, the civilized part of the world, we have GDPR coming to save us on the 25th of May. Can I get an amen? Anyone? Amen. Can I get a fucking hallelujah? Hallelujah. I said fucking hallelujah. God damn it. So these are some of the principles that are enshrined in this privacy regulation. And fundamentally, if you look at that, that's the closest thing we're ever going to have to essentially an Internet Bill of Rights, right? It's pretty fantastic. And Facebook shared their new GDPR-related designs with a number of journalists just the other day. And the following screens are sort of courtesy of TechCrunch. And an article written by a bloke named Josh Constein, in an article titled "A Flaw-by-Flaw Guide to Facebook's GDPR Privacy Changes." So using the emoticon, using reactions to pass judgment. So the first thing you'll notice, this is where Facebook is talking to you about your sensitive information. This is stuff like your sexual preference, your religious views, your political views. And as you'll see at each step, you have this lovely, bright, shiny, candy-coated button to say, yeah, fine, keep horking that information. And then you've got this ugly, dim button where you can go to sort of modify those things. And as you go into that, apparently there are all these sort of interstitials along the way trying to persuade you not to do it. So this is one of those instances where, again, one of the fundamental traits of like dark UX is that, you know, these things are designed to breeze through and offer no resistance to the things that the business wants, that the business model demands, but to give you friction when you want to make changes for your own privacy or other personal reasons. Facial recognition. There's all sorts of interesting law stuff going on, particularly with like Canada and Ireland and stuff like that. But the thing is, in countries where you are allowed to collect this kind of information, Facebook's floating out some of these controls. And the problem with this from a GDPR perspective is one of the things that's, one of the principles that's sort of essential to GDPR is that you need to give people control over how their data is administered and used. And there's basically, in another sort of common dark UX tactic, this is basically all or nothing. You can either sort of let Facebook continue to use their facial recognition tech for all the various uses of it, and you have no control over the more sort of around those types of uses. So, if you're somebody that wants to be alerted when somebody is posing as you, or when your image is being misused, but you don't necessarily want to show up in every friend's photo, you can't make a decision between one or the other. You have to go all the way in or all the way out. Data collection is another issue here. So one of the big things that sort of came up, and the reason why Maxine has a shadow profile on Facebook, is because your movements are being tracked not just on the platform but across the web. So these sort of off-site data collection practices are another issue. And here's the sort of screens where Facebook lets you sort of modify those things. So those tools for data collection are things like if you see a site that has like Facebook like buttons or Facebook share buttons. There's even a tool that they have called the pixel, which is literally just a pixel that hangs out on websites that you can't even see with your naked eye, that just sort of tracks your browsing behavior. And so what Facebook is giving you here is control over how other companies can use that browsing behavior. But again, in terms of granularity of control, not how they're able to use that data. So you can't stop Facebook from using that data to continue to personalize your news feed or optimize other parts of their experience. They've also modified their terms of service recently, which is always a good read. Highly recommend it, particularly if you spend a lot of time in the restroom like I do. Anyway, neither here nor there. One of the cool things about their latest updates is they've called out, hey, guess what? We also own Instagram and a few other things. So we share data policies across those platforms, so great. But you've got this candy-coated button down here to just sort of blissfully blast through it. And then you've got this tiny little hyperlink here to see your options. Pretty meaningless statement. That's where you go to basically say, no, I don't accept your terms of service. And obviously, Facebook's trying to minimize the visibility to that path because that's where things like account deletion and account deactivation live. And so when the journalists were sort of presented with this screen, one of the privacy designers was walking them through it, and they said, do you really think this is the best way to present a yes or no decision? And the designer said, yes. And all the journalists laughed and sort of beat her to death with typewriters or whatever they use these days. So the problem here is that this is super tiny and all that good stuff. But the account deletion stuff is, like I said, buried in here. And one of the nice things about it is they say, hey, before you delete your account, you might want to download a copy of your information. Thumbs up for that part. But they're also basically, rather than sort of giving you the options of deactivating or deleting, they're just going right into delete to make it seem scary and a little bit more risky, and maybe, I don't know if I want to delete it. I might just want to deactivate it. The other thing about this downloading your content, that actually takes hours to do. And in the meantime, you can't do shit to you can't deactivate, you can't delete your account. So people might do that instead and then never actually follow through with their original intent. But so if you finally get through all that stuff, it's just a link. It's not, not even underlined like the last one. It's just down here. I'm ready to delete my account. So again, classic sort of dark UX stuff there. But hey, I'm not just bagging on them. They've done some things well. So the privacy settings here are way more called out. It's not the sort of drab, buried sort of link stuff we were just talking about. They seem to be making an effort here to help you understand how your privacy settings interact with their advertising model. So good job there. I should have asked this at the start. Does anyone actually work at Facebook? No? Okay, good. I have friends there. I love them dearly. And my issue isn't with the boots on the ground there. It's exclusively with those two fucks we opened with. Anyway, the other thing that's great that they've done is they've actually overhauled that download your information tool that we were just talking about. And they've created it in a much more interactive fashion. So now you don't have to download the information. You can actually interact with it directly, which is great. But hey, data portability is one of those things that is huge for GDPR. And that means that you're able to take the data that you've given to one platform and then walk it over nicely to another platform and say, hey, platform, use this data in a smart way. So what Facebook is doing here is they're basically giving you a dumb text file instead of something interoperable and useful. So anybody have a friend named John Smith? Anyone? No? Yeah? You're lying. Sex Compass is lying. He doesn't have a friend named John Smith. The issue with that is, of course, you've got a million John Smiths. How the fuck are you going to know who to pick from on that new platform? So good luck. In the home stretch here, promise, Cheryl Kababa of Artifact Group wrote an article recently called "It's Time to Start Designing for Transparency." I'm a bit of a semantic nerd, so I'd say that it's about designing for trust, actually. But I recommend you all read that, and these are Cheryl's principles. Explain what data you collect, why you collect it, and how that makes you money. Particularly important for ad-driven, shitty business models from the 20th century. And that your design should explain your algorithms. I'm not going to read all of these to you. You guys are all grown-ups. The fourth point, I think, is particularly important, though. So over the last couple of years, Zuckerberg has fallen onto a sort of constant defense of, well, geez, we just couldn't imagine anyone would do anything bad with what we built. And your lack of imagination is not a fucking defense. So my friend Dan Hahn likes to say, consider negative externalities. And that's basically a really fancy way of saying there are shitty people out there. It's your job as a designer to protect the good people in your community from the bad. So start to consider how your technology, how your designs could be misused, and start to prepare for it and start to defend against it. Super important. And if you can't be bothered to design for trust, then I suggest you go Zuck yourself. Thank you. Mic drop. I think that might actually be some sort of techno-occult, like Hellraiser thing. So if he ends up getting skinned tonight, it's not my fault, I promise.
Okay, thank you very much. I will certainly work a little bit closer at my terms and conditions for Facebook going forward. Any questions?
What I don't get is if Facebook's so smart, why are they still trying to sell me the thing I bought last night on Amazon every time I go on?
Can I add to that? So the only ads I get on Facebook are for African American hair care products. And I have curly hair, but I'm not the target audience. So yeah, there's as smart as they are, there's still something off somewhere in the algorithm.
I went to a talk the other day by Mike Montero, and he talks about how designers can be culpable.
Yes.
By accepting orders. So the guy who's at Volkswagen who got sent down. So I just wondered if you got any thoughts on designers just going along with dark UX.
I absolutely do. And so if Mike didn't mention it, I will. In the U.S. during the Vietnam War, there was an incident called the My Lai Massacre, where a soldier, a group of soldiers, mowed down a lot of people. And when they were tried for it, they basically said, we were just following orders. That's not good enough. It's your job to hold yourself to a higher standard. So, anyone? Going once? Going twice? Fuck.